In this presentation, we will continue entering checks and outflows from the bank statement into the QuickBooks check register. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here is where we left off last time. We're going to continue entering checks from this point going forward into the check register. If we go to QuickBooks, we currently have the register open. You can open the register by going to the banking, use register, and then open the current register. We also have the profit and loss and balance sheets open, which you can find by going to the reports drop down, going to the company financial. There's the profit and loss. There's the balance sheet. Our date ranges for those two reports. We'll go over the date ranges when we get to those two. Then we've got the home tab open, where you can find at the company home tab. And we've got the open windows open, found at views and open windows. All we really need is the check register at this point, and then we'll discuss the profit and loss and balance sheet as we go. So here's where we left off last time. We had entered up until January 14th, putting in the Vanguard. We're going to just keep moving forward on January 15th, check number 1011 to Verizon. Now, if we look up Verizon, it's a phone company. So that one seems pretty straightforward. We can say, okay, Verizon's a phone company. So we can say, I'm just going to enter in Verizon as of the 15th. I'm just going to say +1. If the check number is correct, we're going to enter in Verizon. It's a new vendor because we haven't entered it before. This is the first month. We're just going to keep on entering new vendors for that first month tab. We're going to quick add that information, and it will be a vendor. We're going to type in 360. That looks reasonable for a phone bill, so I'm assuming that's a phone bill. Selecting the drop down, we want to find something that's appropriate. Now, some people might put it into utilities or might break it out separately. The standard seems to be to break it out separately now, and that's what's given in QuickBooks. So I'm going to use the QuickBooks standard settings and say that looks like a telephone bill and tab. So that one's pretty straightforward. Going to select that and highlight it, right click and highlight it. Then we've got Epiphone. We saw Epiphone before. It was up here. So now Epiphone is our first repeated vendor. So we didn't know where it would go, but we can kind of copy the last transaction. So let's go back in here and see what that looks like. If we go in here and we say plus to the 18th, there's the 18th. Check number is the 1013. And then I could find Epiphone by selecting the drop down and saying there's Epiphone, or just type in Epiphone and it starts to populate for us, and tab. And notice what it does there. It actually starts to fill everything out for us, meaning it gives us not the actual amount, but it gives us the uncategorized expense already for us. Now note that you could have an option to actually give more detail if you so choose by going to the edit dropdown and going to the preferences. And within the general preferences, this item here, automatically remember account or transaction information, we have it on pre-fill account or vendor based on past entries. You could go to the first one, which is automatically recall last transaction for this name. And that'll pull in the number as well, so the whole transaction. So if you have transactions where the number is repeated the same and you want the entire thing to basically be repeated when you enter the vendor, then you can choose that option. So this is the default that we are currently on, which works well as well. So we're going to keep it here. We're going to say that Epiphone was for 800. And again, we didn't know where it was going to go, but we know it's uncategorized. We know we have a question of it. We might want to add it to our notes here. We could go to our notes and say that we had Epiphone. We also had one on 128, and it's check number 1013 for 600. We may not have to do that, however, because we already have it up here. Once we get the one down, we're probably pretty good. We can say, okay, we know where Epiphone goes from there forward. So there seems like a lot of questions right now, but first month, and once we have a few of them, it should be okay going forward. Now we're going to go to the next one here. We're going to say we found Epiphone. Epiphone has been found, or input. So then the post office. Well, that seems fairly straightforward. I mean, they probably had some kind of post office stuff there. So I'm gonna say, just office supplies or something like that on the post office. So we're going to say on the 21st, the post office was check number 1017, new vendor, post office, tab. We're going to have to set up that vendor. It will be a vendor. $60. Now again, we could get kind of picky on what it is, but if we don't know what it is, I would think if it might be, if it's large, I mean, you might have freight or something like delivery type of costs. If it's small, you might think that it's you might just group it into postage or office supplies. So here's our options here. We've got office supplies here, and then we've got postage and delivery. And that might be, of course, the more appropriate one, postage and delivery. So that covers both of the bases there of whether they're buying postage or delivery. So we'll keep it at that one. Let's go with that and say OK. And then we'll go to the next one and say we have found that one. And then we've got hot air balloon rides. That seems a little unusual for business expenses. So that's one of those ones we might get, you might see this oftentimes with some clients or our own books where we put something on there. We wrote a check for a personal item, possibly. I mean, if I saw that and I was an IRS agent and I'm trying to say should that be deductible, I'd probably at least think to myself, that seems like it's not really business related. So we're probably going to have to ask a question on that and say, okay, where do we want to put this? So we're going to write down hot air balloon rides. This is a check number. What is this? We'll ask, what is this? And my assumption is that this is personal, but I don't want to be too strong with that assumption, because it could be that it's meals and entertainment. It could be that we had a client type of thing or business type of thing, and we were talking business stuff on the balloon and whatnot, and it was a business meeting in a hot air balloon or something like that. But and we might have clients that actually try to convince us of that, as if convincing us because if we have personal expenses on there, it could lower the net income, which could lower taxes. So it could be something that people are hoping to kind of lower their net income to lower taxes. And so they might actually try to argue with us as the bookkeeper and say, and try to justify their case for it being lower. And on our end, just remember that we're not the tax preparer. So we're going to say, hey, I'm just asking this to enter the books in. I'm not the tax preparer. If the IRS, had a problem with this, I'm not the one that's going to be able to represent on our side. We do recommend talking to a tax preparer or a CPA just to double check that that's okay. If you tell me that it should go into the meals and entertainment or some type of business expense, that's where we'll put it. That's what our job is. We're putting the books together. I recommend you go if you want it as a deduction for taxes, that you ask a tax preparer, because they're the ones that are going to have to defend that position if there's a question on it. So as a bookkeeper, if our job is just bookkeeping, remember that we're on your side, we're on the client side. If you have an issue with the IRS, I hope you win that issue. Our job isn't to take that case. If I approve of the information, it's not going to help really your case with the IRS. We're just putting the books together as you want. Talk to your CPA firm, who is the one that can really help you with that kind of negotiation with that. So just keep that in mind, as those kind of things might come up, that what your goal is, what your role is. We're on the client side here. We're going to put it into what they think is best and tell them to seek the advice where appropriate. So we'll put in, for now, we're just going to put in that we don't know where it's going to go. So it'll be on the 21st. And we're going to say hot air balloons is on the 10/18. And we're going to type in hot air balloon rides and tab, add that, vendor 1050, and again, it's uncategorized. We don't know where it's going to go yet. So we'll ask about that. Now QuickBooks is asking me if we want to get checks. We don't want checks because we're not writing the checks in the system we're using. So we have got that one. Next one, we've got Wild Bill's House of Ribs. Again, if we look that up, we'd probably find that that's a restaurant or something. And again, we have the same kind of issue. Is the Wild Bill's House of, was it a business restaurant? Was it meals and entertainment? Is it kind of like a business meeting you went to? Or is it personal? Again, it's not our job to really judge on those two. I can't give tax advice on which should go. If you had a client there, but you talk business sometime or not, that's not my, that's the tax preparer's job. I'm just trying to categorize it wherever is appropriate here. So we'll put that in our same type of question, same kind of question we had on the last one. And we'll enter this data in. We're going to say that this is on the 23rd. And check number 1019. And we're going to say this is going to be Wild Bill's House of Ribs. Ribs. Tab, new vendor. Okay, 670, tab. And we're going to say, again, I don't know where I'm going to put that now. I'm going to ask about that. Okay, and then the next one's going to be on the 24th. Let's see what it is. So we've got this here. That's Greg's Plumbing. So that seems fairly straightforward. So we can say, okay, Greg's Plumbing. We're going to say the 21st. We're going to say Greg's Plumbing. Is that how you spell plumbing? Well, that's what's on the bank statement. So that's what we'll keep there. So Greg's Plumbing. And quick add vendor, and we're going to say that this is 680. Now again, that could be, we might have to ask and say, well, is that on your house or on your on your business setting? But if it's on the business checking, and we're fairly good that they keep those two things separate, and we'll put it into what we would plumbing would be something like repairs and maintenance possibly. So repairs and maintenance would be the typical item there. So we're going to say, all right, put that in the repairs and maintenance. Next item, we've got Sunlight Rentals. So we paid $1,500. So now that looks like rent, like we rented an office building. And we may ask that when we first start the conversation. Do you rent the building? Do you work from home? So we probably have some kind of idea of where they work. If we know they work at an office building and they pay rent on it, and we see Sunlight Rentals, we could probably be pretty confident, although we still might want to ask on that first month. But I'm gonna be fairly confident here that that's what they pay for rent on the office that they do business in. And so we're gonna say that the rent is gonna be for 1024 is the account number. We're gonna put in Sunlight Rentals, and that's going to be for 1,500. And again, it should be something like rent. So if we take a look, we have rent expense. That seems appropriate. So rent expense, we'll keep that. And we'll go to the next item here. So notice I haven't really had to make up any new expense accounts pretty much. And that should be somewhat standard unless you have a company that's got some kind of random things, or if they really want to label something specifically in some other kind of way. And then Epiphone again. So Epiphone, we've done that before. So we're just going to ask the same question. So we're going to say Epiphone on the 28th. Check number 1025. I'm just going to type in Epiphone. Autofills for us, but I want this one, Epiphone. And then the amount is going to be for, this was Epiphone 800. So again, it's uncategorized. I'm just going to keep that for now, and we'll check that out later. So we've got that. Epiphone is in place. And we might want to put that in our notes as well, but I've already got the Epiphone listed twice. So once we know where Epiphone goes, I'm going to assume we're good there. And then we've got the credit card. Okay, Visa credit card. Now that again causes kind of problems because note, if I type in the Visa credit card, this is the typical issue we have with credit cards. On the 31st, we paid credit card for 1026, and we're going to say this is Visa credit card, credit card, I think, and we're going to say that that was for 850. Now the problem is, what expense account does that go to? Yeah, I don't know. The only way I would know that is if we had the credit card statement and knowing what expenses that we want to put the credit card statements to, because those are where the actual vendors are. Not only that, but we have a problem in terms of, do they actually pay off the entire balance on the credit card? In which case we can kind of group all the expenses, or not. So we have a couple different issues on the credit card. How are we going to deal with the credit card? Oftentimes there's an issue with business versus personal on the credit card as well. So we're going to have to sort that out a bit and ask a few questions to determine on what we're going to do with the credit cards. I'm going to write a note on the credit card. So we're going to have this here. Now we'll discuss more on how can we deal with the credit cards? How can we have a system set up to make it as easy as possible for us to be on a cash basis and yet have a credit card still and what are our options there. So that'll be a side note on that we'll discuss later. So for now, we're just going to put it into uncategorized expenses one more time, or not, maybe not one more time, I don't know, but once again, uncategorized expense. And then the next one we have is going to be for Adam Hamilton. And again, I don't know who Adam Hamilton. We can look up Adam Hamilton. We're probably not going to find too much on it. So it sounds like a founding father of the Americans or something. But in any case, I don't know who that is. So we're going to have to ask a question on that. Maybe it's an employee. And we might have been looking at that we probably asked in our setup process, do you have employees? And if they said yes, and we see paychecks at the end of the month, or something that looks like, it might be a paycheck at the end of the month. This is going to be a paycheck, just to let you know, but we don't know yet. So we're going to say that it's going to be a paycheck. Then we're going to guess that, but I'm not going to enter it as one. And we're going to, again, have to think if there is payroll, how are we going to want to do that? That's another area where we have kind of a wrinkle into the system. So these last two, I'm going to do that for these last two. I'm going to write a note on these last two. Those both look like people I don't know, possibly payroll. And then we have to question if they have payroll, how are we going to deal with that? We'll discuss that as a separate issue. We're just going to enter it right now and push forward. So we're just going to write something like Adam Hamilton and Erica Robinson. Why are they? Who are they? And are these paychecks? Question mark, possibly. We can format our writing a little bit better when we draft the letter to the client here. But check numbers, here are the check numbers. Okay, so now we're going to enter this into our system as, once again, we don't know exactly what to do with it. So we're going to say this is going to be check number 1027. I'm going to type in Adam Hamilton, tab, quick add. We're going to probably set him up as a vendor, although I'm guessing he might be an employee. And we might want to, put him in there as an employee here. But if we didn't know, we'd probably just be putting him in as a vendor. And we'll just keep with that system for now, as if we're pushing forward and we don't know exactly what to do. So 3539, and we'll talk a little bit about what those differences will be and what the effect will be in this type of system. And then we're going to say, again, I don't know, uncategorized expense there. And then we've got on one more on 1028. This is for Erica Robertson, tab, quick add, 630. I don't know, uncategorized expense on that one. So that's what we have there. Now, the last couple we've got are going to be withdrawals and bank charges. Now here, these are items that we're not going to have a check number from, but we could have other items that are electronic transfers that we don't have check numbers from. But so here's a withdrawal, so that means that they took money out of the bank. Now again, if they just took money out of the checking account, I have no idea where it went. So we're going to have to ask on that too, and just ask, well, is it business related? Is it not business related? If it's business related, then we can categorize it as uncategorized expense possibly, or something like that. If it's not business related, we'd want to put it in as a draw. So those are the questions we'll ask. So again, we'll put that into our notes. So we've got a withdrawal of cash, and is it personal or is it business? That's our kind of our question, and that'll define what we do with it. Is it an expense or is it a draw? So we're going to put that on 131. I'll put it in there, and this isn't an expense or a check. And I usually put something like other in here because it's not an expense or a check, and there's no one. We don't know who it's going to. No vendor or customer. I'll leave it blank. And I'll just put the 300 payment, and then we're going to put I don't know where it's going to go, uncategorized expense again, and then I'm just going to put here withdraw. So I'm going to put a note this time, just a note to ourselves, hey, that's a draw. I don't know where it went. Cash came out of the company. It didn't go anyone specific, so maybe they used it for business or maybe personal. We don't really know. And then the next one is going to be the last item, which often happens, and that's going to be the bank service charges. So the bank just charged us money. So we'll put that in the system. So bank service charges, again, other, because there's no check number. We could put the bank, whatever our bank is, if it's, Wells Fargo. We'll type in Wells Fargo, quick add. And this might be a vendor, it might be other, that might be more appropriate for the bank. And then we're going to say that it's going to be, although it probably doesn't make a big difference if we put vendor 150. And the account then is going to be something like a service charge. So often they have something like a bank service charge here. So we'll type bank service charge. That's the one, and tab. So that's what we have so far. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.